Hey, everybody, or nobody, whoever's tuning into this on this, our most blessed COVID 19 day of April 7th, 2020. I have a few minutes, a couple minutes, and I just wanted to kind of test these waters and see how this streaming situation works and give a reading of a book I wrote a couple years ago. It was actually my graduate school thesis called Notes for the Wounded Rooms. This is kind of a test run. So if you're tuning in, you're kind of tuning into a test run of something that could become something somewhat regular. But this is a collection, and it's got essays on cinematic horror. And as I was saying, this will be relatively short. Kids are downstairs, and anybody who has kids knows how kids are, and they have a very limited attention span. And even when they're in front of the TV, their attention is transfixed. And my wife is down there, but as soon as they think, we want some time with dad, then they're going to rush upstairs and barge in the room, which is why I locked the door. So it's a good time to read Notes for the Wounded Rooms. It's a surprisingly cloudy day out here in Southern California, so it got me into that headspace of being back in graduate school and having to kind of work on projects. And the last project I did, the project that became this book, um, was just I really was watching more movies than reading books, and I was really just into studying and deconstructing and building poetry around um, cinema and around TV shows. I know that sounds kind of how to say, not too deep, but it was something that felt absolutely right for me. I wasn't prepared to write another work of fiction, and this kind of taking some kind of art that I appreciated and then making it my own, or expressing my gratitude toward it, my thoughts toward it, using it as a foundation for my own thoughts and my own art, was something that really excited me. And my advisor, Lily Huang, was very supportive and excited about this project. So I have to thank her, because if it wasn't for her, I don't think this ever would have gotten to the space that it did. Um, I read some of this when I was at New England College, and let's see, this essay right here called Slime Birth was published in an online journal called Plinth. Um, it's if you just search Plinth Slime Birth, could even put my last name Greffy, it'll come up. I can always link you to it if you reach out to me. I'm happy to do that. Uh, I read this essay. This might be a nice one to read right now, since we're all kind of stuck at home in this COVID-19 scenario. This is called House Womb, and it's about the movie The Dead Come Home. The Dead Come Home is one of the titles of a really gifted filmmaker, James Riffle, who I have had contact with and keep in touch with from time to time. And he did this movie, which is also known as Dead Dudes in the House and The House on Tombstone Hill. It's all the same movie, but it's one of those movies that once you watch it, it's really hard to forget. And it's that kind of experience where certain movies penetrate, certain movies get into a place that you feel it from the inside. And this movie does that to me every time I watch it. Vinegar Syndrome, who's I really appreciate that company and what they do, but Vinegar Syndrome released this beautiful Blu-ray edition of The Dead Come Home. I'm not sure what title. I think if you just search Dead Dudes in the House, Vinegar Syndrome, it should come up. This will be about 5 minutes tops, and it's pretty short. It's about 5 pages. So bear with me, and I hope you enjoy the poetry on this surprisingly cloudy day. This is called House Womb on The Dead Come Home. We broke the tombstone with a golf club and thus tore back to life the woman who died rotting in this shuttered house in the woods, opening the way for horror to smatter us beyond death. We've forgotten that houses are memory holes, the unknown past of what lies buried within a wall, a drain, what waits in the cellar to claw and devour. And no, we are not friends. Never as friends, Bob. Not tonight. One cannot be friends with a drunk carpenter and his toolbox of locked doors and belligerent grunts, complaints between smokes. We exist as an ensemble of death's arms. Our deaths will form a portrait of justice. The house I grew up in, often sharply cracked at night, cried almost every night. A plank of wood hitting skin, the sudden snapping of timber. Years later, I moved into a house in northern New Mexico that was once a healing facility, and then that same sound of wood hitting skin, the sudden snapping of timber, all the way to Grandma's house, darling. Tug the noose tighter to the tune of Jimmy cracked necks like corn snapping in half, and I don't care if you find yourself lost in this maze of impossible rooms. It's what your killer wants, the old dead woman who haunts these halls. She's only here because of your insensitivity to the past. This is the law of how these old houses operate. Her name is Abigail. These are her doors. Turn on all the lights. You will not live through the night. The dead come home and speak a form of truth they were not able to achieve in their waking life, a lucidity of being other than a body, of becoming a house, a zone of inconsequentiality, as if the void is merely a phase to be passed through, an entrance, a gape. And sometimes it's a killer's way of knowing what corner you're about to turn toward and be waiting to hear you scream, to slice your throat so that you too may understand how empathy truly works. Abigail is an elderly slasher, a woman who stabbed her husband 30 times, 37 times in the chest. A pair of scissors shake across goiters and folds, lumpy skin shaking terror. She's mumbling. A hobbling gait steps around the body. And how did she get inside the house? This is what they, the trespassers, wonder. But their time to wonder is almost at its end. It is the wrong question to ask. Rather, the proper question is along the lines of, why can't we leave? All the doors in the house are locked, the shutters impenetrable. Where is my special revelation? The walls from the stairs to the second floor are suddenly smeared in torn wallpaper, like a bloody arrow that marks the way toward the room in which I will bash in your head with this plank of wood. A guy named Mark or Bob or Jim says, I'm going to axe that bitch down. He won't succeed, though. Remember, this is a slasher picture, a fairy tale that inevitably ends in the annihilation of those unlucky enough to be bold. Abigail navigates its maze. She won't allow any of these imbeciles to live. This is not that kind of indulgence. The house won't allow it. Besides, there is always the other side, the non-breathing side, what happens once the dead truly do come home. This is much more appealing once the pain of one's death fuzzes to perpetual entrapment. Later, Mark or Bob or Jim, they appear in a room, sharpening a blade to better sing its death song, soliloquizing about how he plans to kill those who remain. He howls out. It's a beautiful moment. Listening to the dead speak is a privilege that the living aren't granted in life. Abigail the slasher has a daughter who may or may not be undead. This is only revealed halfway through the film. The daughter appears in a bra, seductively sucking at a straw. The daughter as a mother's lure, the daughter as sexual idol. The mother, along with being able to raise the dead as they fall at her whim, is also able to conjure her own flesh and blood to serve her will, to destroy whoever awakes her, whoever enters this trap. An abandoned house, a white house, green shutters, burnt. It was always easy to imagine someone stalking those hallways. Dead children hushing from room to room like a film played out without any other reason than to revel in the pleasure horror seeks to implant. Two teens are in a field at night, a lawn chair, the black-drenched silhouette of their soon-to-be dead bodies. Of course they enter the house. They act as the perfect addition to a joy that escalates by going off the rails of its own tropes. From life to death to the return, the separation. Later, the daughter unfastens that bra, exposing her bare breasts to woo the boys who have wandered up to her room. But Abigail, the mother, is omnipresent, around the corner too soon, too much of a mother. Abigail's house grants her the architectural privilege to shrink both space and duration, the privilege of warping an object so that it comes alive, its own Frankenstein monster of rooms as appendages, nests, sacks of death. She's never where the victims think, and when you see her, it's always too late. A synthesized whistle skitters. Are you alive? No, his friend says. I'm dead. Take a look. Some who die in this house will be chopped in half by possessed windows, Abigail as glass, the screams that will ultimately translate their life to that lucid state of what lies beyond, which the house or Abigail controls and extends. She haunts, a rebel yell of slaughter, guts hanging from Mark or Bob or Jim's body. Gutted yet satiated, he smokes a cigarette. Others will climb ladders and lose hands to machetes, have metal poles driven through their hearts, squirt tubes of blood, or a screwdriver rammed through the head, heed the squirt, circular saws grizzle wrists and ankles. This is a horror as hunger and family, a perverse kind of welcoming home. Yes, if you cut off her head, she will still scream out her death, and there will always be more bodies. Death is a birth, and the house is a womb. Even in sunlight, you won't be safe. Sighing relief won't help you, even if you make it to the front porch, even after you lose all your friends. This country manor was a bad real estate decision. A fixer-upper always comes with certain unforeseen consequences. We'll have it fixed up in no time, he says. He won't. They won't. All will end in a dead whistling over rolling credits, bodies restlessly entombed as permanent fixtures of a house no one will ever live in again. Because truly, my darling, this house is alive. That was Housewomb on the Dead Come Home from Notes for the Wounded Rooms. That was if you haven't seen the movie, I wanted to make the essay so that it didn't matter if you saw the movie or not. That's how all of these are structured. Just they're almost this flowing into, you kind of pass into these rooms, you flow into these rooms, and they explode kind of from the inside out. So there's going to be some imagery coming at you, and there's going to be some imagery that that kind of weaves its way into you, but also there's going to be my own imagery and my own memories and my own interpretations weaving into that. And there's just kind of that mixture, and that's why these more than lyric essays per se kind of work as hybrid pieces, because there's cinematic analysis, there might be some theory in there, some theoretical work, but there's also pure fiction, and there's also pure memory and interpretation of memory. So that's what makes this collection, to me, really, really unique and interesting and meaningful. But again, that was Housewomb on the Dead Come Home. If you liked that, check out the book, or come back for more of these live readings if I decide to do more. We'll see how this one goes and how it sounds. Take care of yourself, be healthy, keep a distance from everything out there, and we'll see you next time. Bye-bye.